Bao Radio.
Un corito no tan sano.
Welcome back. Hey guys, this is Shawn the Party Man, Bow Radio Sports Grind. We're getting the NFL Week 12. Starting off on Thanksgiving, we had the Buffalo Bills taking on the Detroit Lions. Bills are in first place. They squeak by with a victory, 28-25. Lions are kind of surprising. They have a bottom defense, but they got a top 7, top 8 offense. So that was a close game. That started off our Thanksgiving day. After that, we moved on to the Cowboys, who are in second place behind the Eagles in the NFC East. They played division foe New York Giants. That was kind of back and forth. You know, the Cowboys won 28-20. I think the Cowboys are going to be really good moving forward. Really great defense. Like I say every year, the only thing that's holding them back is Dak Prescott, and you Cowboys fans know that. The Giants had a lead at 13-7 at halftime, and Dak had 2 picks. Like I said, he's the one that's going to cost y'all going to the Super Bowl. You Cowboys fans know that. So they beat them 28-20. Moving on, we had the final game of the night. We had the Minnesota Vikings playing the New England Patriots, and that was a pretty close game. You can pass all day on the Vikings secondary. They have a terrible secondary. You can throw the ball on them, but they're an actually pretty good team. They're in first place. They beat the Patriots 33-26. So that was your Thanksgiving holiday football. Well, I forgot to mention, if you're into fantasy like I am, Justin Jefferson had 9 catches, 139 yards, and a TD. The guy's going off. I think he's the best young receiver in football right now. Going forward, they should have a pretty good postseason run, but I don't think they're quite there yet because of the defense. We had a bottom-feeding team, the worst team in the NFL. The Houston Texans lose to the Miami Dolphins 30-15. Not much going on in fantasy there. Next up, we had 2 divisional matchup, not divisional matchup teams, but 2 close teams that are really good in the Cincinnati Bengals and the Tennessee Titans. They're both 7-4, I believe. After this game, it was a close one. The Bengals beat the Titans 20-16. T. Higgins, if you're into fantasy, had 7 catches, 114 yards, and a TD. Moving on from there, we had 2 bottom-feeding teams again. It was the Panthers of Carolina play the Denver Broncos. Russell Wilson's number is 3. We're going to call him 3 and out because they can't put up any points. They lost 23-10 over the Carolina Panthers. Moving on next, the Jets of New York playing the Chicago Bears. They beat them 31-10. We had a guy, Mike White, their backup quarterback, in place of a guy who's struggling right now. But Mike White, if you're a Jets fan, you know him. He's been on the bench. He had a couple big games last year. Blew it out for you guys. You guys have one of the best defenses in football, but the offense not so much. Mike White threw 315 yards and 3 TDs. Pretty impressive. Go Mike White. Going on from there, we have Washington Commanders playing the Atlanta Falcons. That was 19-13. Pretty good nail biter. Pretty good defensive game. This one has kind of surprised me. Cleveland Browns upset my Tom Brady and his Bucks 23-17. It's kind of disappointing, for Brady. I didn't really see that happen. Nick Chubb kind of ran all over him. He had 116 yards rushing and a TD. Hopefully it picks up for the Bucks. Going on from there, we had the Jacksonville Jaguars over the Ravens 28-17 in overtime. This was one of the best games of the week. You had Trevor Lawrence winning OT, and coach has got some balls of steals. He goes for a 2-point conversion and gets it, and that was Trevor Lawrence, their quarterback. Had a huge day, 321 passing yards and 3 TDs. Moving on next, this was also a great game. We had the Oakland Raiders play the Seattle Seahawks. It went to overtime. They beat them 40-34. Josh Jacobs had the fucking game of his career. This guy I would have thought this year, if you're playing fantasy football, to draft him so earlier. He's number 2 in fantasy football running back, but this is real football that he did this day as well. He had 229 yards rushing, 2 TDs, 6 receiving, 74 yards. He had over 300 yards combined. He ripped it off for an 80-yard touchdown to win in overtime to send an upset over the Seahawks, who were, I believe, in first place at the time until they lost this game. What a hell of a game. With Josh Jacobs, if you had him on your fantasy team. Moving on next, best defense in football statistically. We're not talking about fantasy here, but the best defense, probably the best coach team in football under Shanahan. The only thing they're really missing is a QB. Maybe Brady will go there next year and win it all for them. Their defense is unbelievable. Their offense is pretty good too. They shut out the Saints 13-0. Going on from there, we had an actually pretty easy game. Kansas City Chiefs played the Los Angeles Rams. Pretty mediocre day for the Kansas City offense, but their defense stepped up. They won 26-10 over the Rams. Moving on from there, we got the Steelers versus the Colts. They beat them 24-17 with Kenny Pickett having a mediocre game. Both these teams are struggling. They're not going to be in the playoffs this year, but they pulled that one out. Going on from there, this was a great game. The Los Angeles Chargers playing the Arizona Cardinals. They beat them 25-24 in overtime. Justin Herbert leads them down, scores a touchdown. Their coach has another balls of steel. He goes for, instead of tying the game to send it into overtime, he said, no, we're going to go for 2, and they succeeded. Next up, arguably the best team in football, the Philadelphia Eagles playing the Pack. Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers has been struggling this year. The Eagles beat them 40-33. Not only that, this is Jalen Hurts. He's number one. He's a really good real-life quarterback. We'll see what he does in the playoffs this year, but number one fantasy quarterback. Guy's killing it. He had 153 passing yards, 2 TDs, and he rushed for 157 yards. Unbelievable. Guy's good. Team's good. We'll see what happens. A friend thinks his Cowboys are better than them. I don't know. We'll see what happens in the playoffs if they get there, because I know the NFL would like to see that because it's 2 marquee teams. It's like similar to the Yankees playing the Red Sox but in football. And that's the end of Week 12. Moving on to Week 13 of the NFL season here. Thursday night we had the Bills playing the Pats to start it out. They beat them 24-10. It wasn't much of a matchup. Patriots offense isn't doing very good this year. They have a really good defense. Belichick's 70-something years old. They have an underperforming quarterback playing one of the best teams in the league. It kind of got blown out. Some of the play calling was kind of selective, so we'll see if their offensive coordinator be there next year or not, but they beat them 24-10. Stephon Diggs in fantasy had 7 catches, 92 receiving yards, and a touchdown. Not much of a competition on Thursday Night Football Week 13. Going from there, we had the Vikings playing the Jets. This was a good game. The Vikings beat them 27-22. But here we go, this Mike White guy again. Maybe you guys found something in this guy. The only thing that struggled with was he threw 2 interceptions. He threw 2 picks. He had 369 yards passing, made it somewhat of a close game. The Vikings pulled that out 27-22. Moving on from there, probably the best team in football, man. The only thing they struggle with is their secondary and their defense, but their offense, I don't know how you game plan for Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and then they actually have a good running game with their quarterback and also with Miles Sanders. But here, they went in and they blew out the Titans 35-10, man. The thing about the Titans is I don't know why they stopped running the ball with Derrick Henry. I was going to say 300 pounds. Obviously, he's not 300 pounds, but that's how big he looks. He's like 6'2", 6'3", 270. He's huge. You stopped running the ball with him. I don't know. That's how you beat this Eagles. You got to wear him down. You got to keep him off the field because, once again, number one quarterback in fantasy, Jalen Hurts, 380 yards, 3 touchdowns. Also had a rushing touchdown. 4 touchdowns in one game from a quarterback. Unbelievable. A.J. Brown, 8 catches, 119 and 2 TDs. I'm saying it right here, guys. I think the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl. I think that's what's going to happen. Hell of a team. We went from there. The Packers, Packers of Green Bay playing the Chicago Bears. They beat them 28-19. Aaron Rodgers says that he owns the Bears, and actually he kind of does because every time they seem to whoop their ass, he might have lost 1 out of the last 10 against them. He murders them. So, yeah, he does kind of own them. He kind of gave the Hitler salute, hopefully, a meme on the internet, but he does own that team. Going on from there, we had 2 bottom-feeding teams, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Atlanta Falcons. The Steelers pulled that game out 19-16 in a pretty close game. Going in from there, the Detroit Lions were playing the Jags. I have some for this Detroit Lions team, maybe because I got some guys on fantasy, but they have a really good offense, top 7 offense, and they blew them out 40-14. Jared Goff, 340 yards, 2 TDs. Another guy I have on my team, Amon St. Brown, 11 catches, 114 yards, and 2 TDs. Blew them out. Looked pretty good. They're not going to make the playoffs, but hey, you know what? They've won more games this year than they have in a long time. It's a foot in the right direction. They have a great coach in Dan Campbell. Something good for Detroit fans. Not your year yet, but you're looking pretty decent, man. You're looking pretty good. Going in from there, we had the Browns beat the Texans 27-14. Deshaun Watson had his comeback. I don't know if you know about Deshaun Watson, but he hadn't played football in the last 700 days. Because he got in trouble, for the old rub and tug at the massage parlor. So he looked a little rusty out there. But the Cleveland defense looked unbelievable. I started him in one of my fantasy leagues. They had 49 points in fantasy. This was basically a defensive game, even though the score was 27-14. But Cleveland had 3 touchdowns off their special teams and defense. One was a punt return from Donovan Peoples-Jones. The other one was an interception and then a fumble return. And they also had 2 interceptions and 2 fumble recoveries. If you had them on your fantasy team, like my buddy Brian did, he'll be here with us, joining us soon. They killed it, man. Their defense just killed it. That's why I picked them up and beat the guy in first place in our leagues. Next up, we had the New York Giants playing the Washington Commanders. This is a divisional matchup, and this is what I hate about sports. That sports should never end in a tie. It was 20-20. It ended in a tie. I don't understand that. Hockey, baseball never ends in a tie. Hockey can end in a tie. Football, but I don't understand why any sport can end in a tie. But it did. It was 20-20, and it's a division game. Both teams still have a shot at making the playoffs. Pretty good game. We'll move on from there. The 49ers defense and team is really good. They lost their starting quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, to an ankle injury. They still won the game 33-17. He went out early in the first quarter. Both teams are 8-4 after this. But had a guy come in named Brock Purdy as like their third string quarterback, and he had 210 yards passing and 2 TDs, which is actually pretty good. McCaffrey went off as usual, one of the best fantasy running back in football, one of the best running backs in football. He had 66 rushing yards, 8 catches for 80 yards, and a TD. Like I said, I think the only thing the 49ers are missing is a quarterback. I don't know if they'll go to the Super Bowl this year, but Purdy guy plays good. They're that good, guys. That's how good their defense is. Moving on from there, we had the Raiders and the Chargers. Josh Jacobs at it again. They won 27-20 over the Chargers, but Josh Jacobs, like I said, the number 2 running back in football, killed it, 144 yards, 1 TD. You also had Adams, who's been unbelievable. Devontae Adams here lately. 8 catches, 177 yards, 2 TDs. I don't know what's up with either one of these teams this year. I thought they'd be better, but they're kind of in the middle of the pack. They're trying to make a playoff spot, but I don't know if it's going to happen. Maybe the Chargers. We'll see. Here you go, Weez. Your Cowboys blew out the Colts 54-19. This is the first time ever in NFL history there's ever been a score of 54-19, which is kind of ironic. The Cowboys scored 33 points in the fourth quarter off of 5 turnovers. That's never even heard of that. Dallas Cowboys. They did a little bit with their offense, but it was mainly their defense. They have the number 1 fantasy defense and a top 3 actual defense in the league. Blew out the Colts, man. You guys are going to be right there in the playoffs. You'll probably be playing Tom Brady and the Bucs on the road in Tampa your first round, because that's how it's going to probably shape up, because I doubt you're winning the NFC East over the Eagles. You're 2 games back, and there's a lot of football left, but I don't see it happening. We had the Baltimore Ravens come back against the Broncos. Broncos cannot score this year. Beat them 10-9. Sorry, you Russell Wilson folks. He got $1 billion. No, he really didn't get that much money, but he got 300-something million and cannot win with this team. I don't know what's going on. Lamar Jackson got hurt in this game in the first quarter. They had a quarterback come in, Tyler Huntley, who's actually a pretty decent quarterback. He led him back under 30 seconds to go and won the game 10-9. So good for Tyler Huntley and good for a pretty good team in the Ravens. Hopefully Lamar Jackson bounces back and get his health back soon. We had the Seahawks' divisional game. We had the Seahawks playing the Rams. They won 27-23. Geno Smith, once again, he was a backup to Russell. He's doing better than Russell right now. At 367 yards passing and 3 TDs to lead his team over the Rams, who actually had a pretty good bounce back week, but they fell 4 points short. Probably one of the most watched games of the week, probably one of the most betted games on the week. Kansas City, for whatever reason, cannot beat Joe Burrow or any Cincinnati team on the road for that matter. They were on the road in Cincy, and the Bengals came out ahead 27-24. Close game, but maybe Cincinnati has their number. I think the Chiefs are going to be in the Super Bowl as long as they don't have to play Cincinnati. Cincinnati's got their number right now. And this is my favorite game. Tom Brady. Didn't realize this stat until I heard Eli and Peyton or somebody talking about it on Monday Night Football. They came back and beat the Saints 17-16. For whatever reason, Brady struggles against the Saints. You know, the year they won the Super Bowl, he lost both regular season matchups and then finally beat them in the playoffs. He struggles against the Saints, but he struggled for about 48 minutes of the 60-minute football game the other night and came back. They were down 13 points. Tom Brady leads them back, scores a touchdown to tight end Cade Otton, gets the ball back. Saints playing conservative, leads the Bucs down the field. Under 30 seconds to go, throws a touchdown to Rachaad White, who reminds me a lot of his old buddy from New England, James White. A little bit bigger. Hell of a game. That's only Brady's second time in his career being down. I think he broke Peyton Manning's record tonight, 43 fourth quarter and overtime wins, come from behind wins. It's the most of all time. He broke Peyton Manning's record. But this was the only time that he's ever came back more than 13 points down going into the fourth quarter or overtime. The last time being against the Atlanta Falcons in the Super Bowl. You remember that one. He was down 28-3 in the third. That happened. Hell of a week of football. Till next time, Shawn the Party Man, Bow Radio, Sports Grind.
Un corito no tan sano.
All right, moving on to the MLB contracts. You guys know it's the offseason. They just had the winter meetings for the major leagues. Pretty big names. And I'm not going to get to all freaking 87 signings, but I'm getting to the big names here. AL MVP Aaron Judge, who literally broke the record this year with 62 home runs. He beat Roger Maris's record from 1961. I don't know if you heard the rumor about them juicing the balls in New York, which I doubt that's true. They got a short porch on it. The guy was a beast, hitting home runs everywhere. But he re-signed with the Yankees, 9 years, $360 million. Cardinals. That's an average of $40 million a year. Good for him, man. Good for him. Smart guy. I don't know if anybody deserves $360 million, but good for him. My St. Louis Cardinals signed Wilson Contreras, catcher, longtime catcher for the Chicago Cubs, 5 years, $87.5 million. That's a great signing, I believe, because we lost Yadier Molina, in my opinion, Hall of Fame catcher, one of the best of all time. He went into retirement. Him and Albert Pujols, legendary Dominican. They retired together. We still got Adam Wainwright coming back, but that's a good sign for the Cardinals. I like it. If you ever played for the Dodgers, you should go play for the Dodgers if you want a $300 million contract, because that's exactly what happened with Corey Seager, signed a $300 million contract with the Rangers. We had Manny Machado, who signed a $300 million contract with the San Diego Padres. And then recently we had Trey Turner, former Dodgers shortstop, sign an 11-year deal for $300 million, the Philadelphia Phillies, who were the NL champions this year. So we'll see if that helps him. He's got a bat. They still have a team looking good. That's a lot of freaking money, guys. Your old Justin Verlander signed a 2-year, $86.6 million contract. That's $43.3 million a year with an option for a third. Pretty impressive. The guy's 39. Well, the guy that played for the Mets, Jacob deGrom, went to Stetson University. 5 years, $185 million, signed with the Texas Rangers. That's a huge contract. Good for him. These are just the big blockbuster names and the big money. So I'm going to stop that there with the MLB. Moving on to college football. It's that time of year, guys, where we're about to get in the bowl season. We'll get in the Cotton Bowl. We'll get into the Orange Bowl. We'll get into the Chick-fil-A Bowl. We'll get into all these bowl games, but these are the top 4 teams. So over the week, we had Georgia in the SEC Championship pretty much blow out LSU 50-30. LSU is the 14 seed. Georgia's the best team in college football. They're the 1 seed. They got the 1 seed in the bracket in the tournament. They're probably going to win it all. That was your Southeastern Conference Championship. Next up, they had Michigan come back and beat Purdue 43-22. They're the number 2 seed. They squeaked in. Everybody's mad about this. That's why here in the next couple years they're going to move up to a 12-team bracket. But we had TCU, Texas Christian University, lose to K-State 31-28. Kansas State was ranked number 10. TCU is now number 3. They got the 3 seed. They lucked out because they only had 1 loss. They come from the Big 12, which is a kind of a smaller division, but that's where they're at. And Ohio State's the 4 seed. We have Georgia playing Ohio State. Georgia's the 1 seed. They're going to blow out Ohio State. And Michigan is going to blow out TCU. So it'll be the 1 versus the 2 in the national championship, with Georgia overcoming Michigan. We can talk about it, we can debate about it, but that's what's going to happen. There's no, I call it the small 10, it's really called the Big 10. There's no small 10 school winning this year against Georgia. Georgia's going to dominate them, so if you're betting money, take Georgia, take the points, they're going to win. Until next time, this is Shawn the Party Man, Sports Ground Bio Radio.
Un corito no tan sano.
Yo, disfruta el sabor de siempre, con harina de maíz mazorca, y dale, 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 la vuelta al plato. Cocina arepa, también empanada, juega con tus hijos, ríe con tus panas, disfruta en familia, una cocinada. En tu mesa la silla nunca tan contada. Disfruta el sabor de siempre, con harina de maíz mazorca, y dale, 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 la vuelta al plato. Siempre felices, siempre contento, dale la vuelta a todo momento. Cocina algo rico, algún invento. Este es tu día, yo lo presiento.
Tu harina de maíz mazorca de siempre, ahora con nueva imagen.
Para cosechar lanzadores hay que sembrar disciplina. Para cosechar jonroneros hay que sembrar honestidad. Para cosechar grandes ligas hay que sembrar valores. Porque los grandes ligas no crecen en el monte, se cultivan. Así como el mejor arroz. Arroz La Garza, patrocinadores de nuestros próximos grandes ligas.
Ahora vamos a hidratarnos con agua cristal en su nueva presentación de Tetra Pak. Agua cristal, menos plástico, más vida. Comparte, recuerda darnos tu like y activar la campanita para notificaciones.